Hello and welcome to another episode of AWS She Builds Tech Skills. My name is Tamara Gagliardi. I'm a solutions architect, and today I'm joined by Natalie. We have so much to cover. I'm so excited. We'll be talking about Kiro. We'll be talking about development. We'll be talking about all the tools that we can share with you to make that development faster, more enjoyable. And Natalie, before we jump into all that we have to cover today, I would like you to introduce yourself, tell us a little more about who you are, where you're joining us.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Natalie White here in Southern California. Very sunny, nice outside. Tamara and I are here in Southern California. I'm a solutions architect as well, and I am here to talk to you about Kiro and Q Developer. I am a former software developer. I say I'm a former software developer. I still write software all the time, but I was a full stack Java developer and Angular for 15 years at 4 different companies before becoming a solutions architect, and now I help customers build stuff. So yeah, I'm having a great time. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you all about Kiro.
Yeah, like Natalie said, we're joining from Southern California. I'm joining from LA. I see that we have people joining from India. I would like to hear from the rest of you where you're joining. We also have a lot of people that are excited to hear about Kiro and all that Kiro has to offer. I know, Natalie, you work very closely with Kiro. You yourself build a project. And I know it's a project that's very dear to your heart. Maybe we'll jump into that. And that's usually how we start as developers, right? There's an idea that we want to come and build. What was your idea and where did that come from?
Yeah, this is an idea actually that has been on my back burner for literally years. It's one of those things that I thought, hey, there's a problem. I think I can maybe solve it. But I really never had the time to go start from scratch. And I think that's the biggest barrier when you have a big project that, we have an idea for. I have 2 kids. I have a really, time consuming job. I have lots of other hobbies that are totally non-technical, so I don't spend all of my time coding. And so having this side project kind of in the back of my mind for several years was honestly a little bit frustrating because I have all the skills that I need to be able to go build it. I just didn't have the time, right? So the idea is called SWE Leader Lineup. So if you don't know what SWE is, Society of Women Engineers, I'm very passionate about Society of Women Engineers, and they have been a huge contributor to my success in my career in the tech industry. And there are lots of volunteer roles and things like that in the organization, but there are so few of us that it's really difficult to find potential leaders for the Society of Women Engineers. And as a woman engineer, it's difficult for me to understand where could I potentially fit in and contribute to kind of the mission of SWE and being able to support women in tech and engineering roles. And so, yeah, SWE Leader Lineup, swell. And so, yeah, I wanted to create an application that did that. At first, in my head, I thought I could do some ETL or something like that. But now we have Gen AI. It's never been easier to make matches and things like that happen. And so that's the project that I'm working on right now.
I'm excited that we'll get to share that. We have people also joining from Kenya, so thanks from all around the world. And also people commenting from Amazon Q CLI from day one. He's been loving it. Thank you so much. We'll be jumping also into Q CLI and tell like that end-to-end developer story and where each of these services play a role. We'd love to hear from our audience. So if anybody is just joining, again, share where you're joining from, if you have used Kiro before, if this is new to you. And I know, Natalie, as you walked us through this project, we wanted to add some context because sometimes just talking about the service itself or talking about the features is harder to resonate. And I know this was also a project that you were thinking to build for a really long time. And in the past, I think you told me, we would try to get other people to help us with different pieces. And now with the technology that we're going to show today, it's kind of that you have that extra help. I see it more as like Kiro, where I'm the product owner and I can have that idea, translated into what we're going to cover, like specs or different steps that you can take. But for you, what is Kiro? How would you describe Kiro to those that haven't heard about it before?
Yeah, so Kiro is a fork of VS Code, so it's its own IDE. It's a separate application, but it is natively integrated with GenAI, agentic GenAI capabilities, and it has the concept of spec as code or spec-driven development. And the real difference between what you can do with Q Developer in your own IDE versus what Kiro provides is around that orchestration, and honestly, like project orchestration, project structure, and the design requirements task list kind of format. So as a developer, if I have an idea, I have kind of the business level requirements. I could go document all the user stories that are necessary to be successful. Then I have to decide, okay, now I need to build out the project structure. Okay, now I need to build out the front end and the back end, or develop full services together kind of in a full stack agile way. Like all of that orchestration is stuff that I would have to put into a project plan, figure it out, like make dependency lists and stuff like that. All of that orchestration, Kiro can actually do for you. And so the difference between me as a developer going to my IDE and telling, say, Q developer, hey, I need to build out a project structure for a CDK app that will run on AWS, and here's all the business logic. Like I'm the orchestrator, but with Kiro, it's doing a lot of that orchestration for you, and you're just kind of keeping it in line, asking it questions, iterating on different things that it might not have done exactly the way you expected, and kind of moving through that task list to accomplish what you're actually trying to build. And what's awesome is that it also like kind of frees me up to go do something else, and then I'll come back to it. I'm like, oh, it's done. Great. So that's kind of, it changes the development workload to kind of the feel of being a product owner, but you still have to know enough to know what to ask for, validate that it's creating and building the right things, and iterating on making sure that the project is building on a regular basis and all of those things. So it's really in the orchestration, and it's a total paradigm shift around me as a developer orchestrating all the things versus Kiro being able to take some of that heavy lifting around the project planning and dependencies.
Agreed. And we have somebody from the audience that it's saying it's like a huge development. It like helps with that management. So I agree. Like you said, we were joking off camera that you can go and like even have it multi-thread, right? Like have
Yeah.
multiple things happening at the same time. That's why I always picture it like having my own development group, and I'll just go and delegate the tasks.
Yeah.
So with that, I know our audience is very engaged in seeing and building and creating. So I'm going to start sharing the camera, and maybe we're already sharing the camera. I'm going to share the screen so that maybe we can start. Everything started with the idea, and now we're going more to the prompt, right?
Yeah. So even when we talk about like kind of delegating tasks to a GenAI developer assistant developer tool, right? You still have to give it enough context. The idea that you could give it a couple of sentences and have it build exactly what you had in mind is not realistic, right? So we want to have realistic expectations so we're not disappointed. But really, if you just say, hey, go build me a web app that does some sort of matching, that's not enough context for the code or the solution to be actually what you would want to put into production. So this was actually the prompt that I gave Kiro in the beginning, that I want to build a web application called Society of Women Engineers Leader Lineup. And the purpose of the app is to best fit matching women to potential SWE leadership roles via generative AI. So at the end of the day, we have SWE roles, the context of what those roles require, their prerequisites, there are different things that are needed. There are different capabilities that need to be present. And then we have women in engineering who have different professional roles, but also have different volunteer roles, past volunteer roles. So he has different levels, there's local sections, there's society level leadership, all of that context is stuff that we would want the application to have to be able to match. So there's some additional stuff in the prompt around, like, I want to make sure that I'm using Bedrock, that I'm deploying to AWS. I'm going to build a knowledge base from publicly available data, like on LinkedIn, and the SWE website. And I listed a few use cases, right? If I'm if I have a target candidate which would be me, right? I can go ask what SWE roles would I be a good fit for. And then if I am a SWE leader, I'm looking for a SWE leader, I can say, okay, give me a list of like the top 30 women in engineering who, might fit those roles. So that's the kind of like, again, gave it a little bit of the business context. I gave it a little bit of the user stories. And then what Kiro built out for me was a fully fledged requirements, design, and task list, which I then iterated on to start building some of the code that would allow all of these things to happen.
And I know we also talked, this is one of your projects, but this same structure of thinking and then even the project itself could be applied to so many other use cases. I was thinking like, given that we help like financial services or energy factor, a lot of them have compliance submissions. One idea that I thought as you were sharing that is maybe you are able to gather all the compliance requirements from either external HR systems, regulatory registries, and then be able to start auto-filing or auto-gathering some of those requirements and mixing it with internal information that you have. So a lot of those submissions take months or sometimes years to go through. That's one of the ideas that I saw through, but there's just, this is just one example. Also, in terms of scraping, I think you're going to walk through scraping or getting information from LinkedIn. I know that's super valuable for other applications.
Yeah.
I'm curious from the audience too, if you have built anything similar in the past, would love to hear from you on projects that maybe come up or ideas that you're looking to develop, and we can pop them up and maybe walk through what that might look like as well. So Natalie, okay, so now we have so far the context, the idea, the prompt, and you walked us through what that prompt should have in terms of the different sections. From there, where did you go? What was next?
Yeah, so let's get into Kiro. When you start the Kiro IDE, you're going to have the option to do vibe coding versus coding as spec or spec as code. And so I chose the spec as code. I put in that prompt, and Kiro will go through the process of generating first a requirements document. And so anyone who's done software development knows you have to have a requirements document. You have to have some user stories around, hey, who is the persona that's using the application or the tool? What do I want to do? And what are my acceptance criteria? All of this was generated by Kiro. I made a few tweaks here and there.
Was it generated by Kiro from the prompt that you gave it?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yep. So from the prompt that I gave it, it generated a requirements document that's, over 100 lines long and has 6 or 7 user stories, including the acceptance criteria. And so I just read through these. I'm like, yep, that sounds good. Yep, that sounds good. And just kind of reviewing what it put together. And then when it was done with those requirements, it moved on to the design document, which is more of a technical document.
Were there any of the requirements that kind of caught your eye of like, hey, I wouldn't have thought about this, and maybe?
Yeah, actually, so I didn't, you saw in my prompt, I did not specifically ask about anything with regard to authentication or security or anything like that. And so when I saw that one of the requirements is that as a user, I want to interact with a secure and user-friendly web interface, of course I want that, but I didn't say that, right? As anyone who's a developer knows, right? Security is never like an explicit requirement from the end user or the business leader, but it's always an expectation. And so seeing that it generated that as one of my last requirements, I'm like, well, of course I wanted that. I didn't ask for that, but thanks. Obviously, I would, sometimes when we develop, right, we're going for functionality first. And then sometimes the security piece is like, oh, well, I'll handle that later. Or yeah, I'll ensure that everything, like when I do a code review or, a library, a static code review or something like that, I'll make sure that it's going to be secure. But Kiro is actually helping you do the right thing in an easier way by making that a user story and an acceptance criteria. And I thought that was amazing.
Okay, so now we have that document, and maybe before we jump into the next step, if you can walk us, I think for a lot of us might be a new, or a lot of the audience might be new to see the interface itself. So what are we seeing here? In the middle, I see the document, and then.
Yes. So in the middle, you see the document, and this is, if you've ever used VS Code or really any IDE, right? You're going to have some folder navigation stuff here on the left, very normal. You've got all your plugins here all to the far left, and you can see here, actually, I've got Amazon Q as well here installed. I'm not really using the chat capability because I've got Kiro here on the right, but it is there in case you want to use it. So this isn't even really an either or conversation. You can use Kiro and have Q embedded inside of Kiro as well, which goes back to some of the multi-threaded things you can do. And then here on the right is where we have the Kiro interface where we can ask it questions. So maybe like I'm coming back from a break. So I'm going to say, I'm coming back from a break. Where are we at in the task list? If I could type. All right, so it's going to sit here and think. What it's doing is it's going and it's looking at all of the folder structures. It's looking at its own requirements, design, and task documentation to be able to give me a summary of where we're at. So it's going to list out all of the completed tasks. Spoiler alert, my application's not actually done yet. I'm kind of
well, that was the whole idea,
it.
right? Some of it live and actually go through it.
So I wanted to make sure that we had like some development tasks that we could still work on as we were going along. So yeah, we're about 40-50% of the way done with what we've built. So it lists out kind of the things that we've completed. So that's what the structure of the IDE looks like. And then just like any other IDE, you've got the terminal here at the bottom as well.
And this is also great to use if you're new to a team and you're giving a task to develop a new feature. You can also use it to ask questions related to the current code base as well.
Yeah.
We do, before you jump into the design, maybe we can double tap on that security piece. We do have a question that was more curious about what it designed on the security side or what it suggested so far.
Yeah, so what it's done so far is as it's built out the CDK infrastructure, it built out a Cognito user pool and things like that associated with how you authenticate into the application. And then, of course, it's using CDK to be able to generate some of the infrastructure that things are going to be deployed to. And so it's using kind of those security best practices. For me, I'm very security minded. I worked at an e-commerce payment company for many years. And so I'm always going to do, a static security scan after I'm done. But just having that use case there, some of the tasks that are going to implement that use case, since it's kind of going in order, are going to be done as I get like closer to the bottom of the task list. I can run through the task list really quick as we go through the design.
And you can also iterate if there are specific requirements in your organization or compliance requirements or whatever might be. You can also add that to the prompt to help you even think through what are some of the items that you might want to add. Yeah. And there's another question I think we have from our audience, and I'm loving all the engagement. So keep on with the comments and questions. That I guess this user, Head of Fire, is also aware of Bedrock and was wondering maybe the difference between or how Kiro is or not using in Amazon Bedrock.
Yeah, great question. Both Q Developer and Kiro are backed by Bedrock. And so we're using our own tools to provide this kind of higher level abstraction service that helps develop the developer persona specifically. So our product teams use Bedrock to iterate on which models are the best, right? Right now, Claude. Right now, 3.7 and 4 are what's being used by both Q Developer and Kiro, and you can actually select what model you use. I'm just using 3.7 right now because it has more availability in general. They're still ramping up on 4, but you can choose what model is there, but in a more targeted way, right? So if I'm a developer, I don't want to spend my time going and choosing a bunch of different models to determine for myself, like what is going to generate code the best. The service team is doing that on my behalf and is actually fine tuning some of those algorithms and implementations specific for the types of modalities and questions that I'm using. So if I'm going to ask a question that would require an agentic approach of generating the core functionality, the unit tests, potential integration tests, and it even generated like a demo script for me. Those types of things are what I would want to be able to see, but I don't want to like be focused on which model is the best. I want the service team to do that for me. So you'll be able to choose the models that are the best. And so I'm just using Claude 3.7 here in Kiro. But Q Developer and Kiro are both backed by Bedrock. And so the models that are available there are what the service team is using to be able to deliver all this functionality.
Excellent. Okay, I'm intrigued. We have the requirements. Now
Yes.
you are about to jump onto sharing that design.
Yeah. So the design document is much, much more technical. And actually, since this is like a markdown file, maybe I could go preview it so that it looks nicer as if it were in, a GitHub repo or whatever. So the design document here actually it generates a high level architecture diagram, which is really hard to see without zooming way, way in. But it basically has kind of those functional areas around the scraping mechanisms, the matching mechanisms, the authentication mechanisms. So it generates this high-level architecture for you. And then it talks about the technology stack. And this is where I iterated with Kiro a little bit because at first it generated a React application. Well, I'm more familiar with Angular. So I just told Kiro, I'm more familiar with Angular. Can you make it an Angular application instead? And it's like, sure, I can do that. And so that's what it ended up building. And then you have here that, the fact that we're going to use Bedrock, we're going to use a SQL database for structured data, we're going to have some caching happening, and then there's going to be some containerized infrastructure that's going to run all of the web application stuff. So this is all of the technical documentation. Again, it's going to define all of those interfaces that you would normally see within a technical document. And so I just scrolled through here, reviewed all of it for accuracy, some of the naming conventions and things you can change the names of different parameters and stuff. But the awesome thing is that unlike some of the one-off or vibe coding tools that you have, because it has all of the context of what you're trying to accomplish, it's going to name those variables in a much more mindful way. So it's obvious like, oh, I'm going to have a matching algorithm and I'm going to have primary factors. I had mentioned in my prompt that I wanted to have geographical fit as a potential criteria. Like all of those things, because it knows the context of what I'm actually trying to deliver, it's going to give me a better recommendation without me having to try to change like variable names and things like that. It seems like something small, but like that's a big deal.
And part of what we were talking about earlier too was before maybe you needed an ML developer, you needed a front-end developer, you needed all this additional help. And now you're gonna like show us a little more further into our session how all of that is possible. But just having a view of that technical requirement, we went from business now into a technical requirement, is really already speeding up a lot of our process. I know there's a couple of questions I wanted to bring up. People are joining us from all over. We have Victor. Hi, Victor. Thanks for popping into our channel and learning more about Kiro. There was a question also about what languages that Kiro support. I am not sure if this is the question in terms of programming languages. I know that you just mentioned you're more familiar with Angular, so you instructed Kiro to use that. If it were to be in terms of whether to post in terms of the prompt, Kiro currently is optimized for English language conversation and interactions. It does support additional languages. Those are coming very, very soon. And in terms of questions from the variety of the languages that you can chat with Kiro, you can chat in other languages, but the indexing of the documentation at the moment on those data sources is in English. So stay tuned. I know the development team is working very hard to add additional features. And then another question also, Natalie, came up in terms of the availability, or like if people now are so excited about what you're sharing them about Kiro, how they can start using it. Is it only CLI? We talked about the fact that it's an IDE. And I know that you're close with the product team in terms of how that's going.
Yeah, so if you've gone to Kiro.dev, you've seen that it's right now behind a waitlist. That is because there was so much interest in it that they had to put it behind a waitlist so they could continue to scale the service up. That waitlist has a lot of people on it, but I can tell you the product team is working through the waitlist as we speak. So if you're on the waitlist, expect that you'll be able to have access to Kiro soon. And for sure, later this year. So it's not going to be a long drawn out process. They're scaling out the service as we speak to be able to onboard the folks who are on the wait list. So get on the wait list. You'll be able to onboard later this year. And as we kind of scale up, everybody will get to have more access. But as you can imagine, having a huge influx of interest while the service is still in preview, they got to ramp it up before they can give access to everyone else, just to make sure that it's going to be a good experience for everyone.
I agree. Okay, so recap again. We went from the idea, the design, the specs, now the
task list.
Yeah, the task list. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, we haven't even gotten to writing any code yet, except for the interfaces that were in the design document. And by the way, this just took a few minutes. We're walking through it pretty slowly right now because we're explaining it, but really, it just took a few minutes to build all of this out. Huge accelerator. So like I was talking about, if I was developing all of this myself, right, I might be creating a task list like in Jira or Asana or something, like, hey, what do I need to do next? Oh, well, I had to set up the project structure first to be able to fill it with stuff, right? So that's my first task list. So the task list really does walk through the different stages and dependencies of building the software application that we're talking about. And it mentions the requirements that it's associated with, but also this is Kiro's task list as well. And so as it's generating code or files or documentation to support all of these tasks, it's walking through here and updating the task list as it goes. So you see when I asked, like, oh, I'm coming back from a long break and like, here's what I've done. These are the tasks that it's referring to, are the tasks that are in this file. So you can see here, we've gotten through 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So it's gone through some of that role-based access control. We talked about, security, best practices and things, the authentication system. And it's created the web scraping service. It's created the LinkedIn profile scraping service and kind of gone through the matching service as well. So that's where it's at right now. But as it's gone through here, right, I'm iterating through it I'm not just taking everything that it gives me, right? I'm iterating through it. I'm making changes. I'm making sure that it builds, all of those things.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna ask. So does it kick off then the first task and it goes to the second one, or how have you seen it work on your end?
So it goes in stages. So what it does is it starts with the first task. It'll be over here in the right. It'll say, hey, do you want to get started on the first task? Yes. So you basically you're the human in the loop. You're confirming that you want it to move on. You wouldn't want it to go through and generate all of the tasks simultaneously without you checking in with it, right? Because again, there's been a few changes that I've made, not related to like the fact that the service is in preview and it messed something up necessarily, but although I have seen a couple of the things that I've seen it be challenged with are like making sure that imports within the same project are like the right directory structure. Because again, it's generative, right? So unless it's traversing my directory structure live, it's going to be generating what it thinks is the next best kind of directory structure or name of a file or whatever. So sometimes the imports don't quite match up. Every once in a while, it'll make a change to, in this case, the package JSON and include a library that has a dependency mismatch or something like that. So I'll have to go address that. But it's like simple little things. For the most part, the code that's being generated to accomplish all of these tasks has been really well formatted. All of the variable names have been have totally made sense. It's commented, and as I go along, I'm having it update the README files as well, so that everything is kept up to date. That's something that, again, I'm a human, I'm a developer, I'm going to focus on functionality. I would probably leave all the documentation till the end, but because Kiro is doing everything automatically, I can have it document the code that it's writing in a README file, so that, like you were saying, it's easier for someone else to onboard to the application later on if they're like joining my team or going to contribute or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, and I know that some organizations have very strict requirements on how that needs to be documented, and that's something else that also you can provide in your prompt and say, follow this structure, and it will follow. Like, comments are huge. Okay, So
And by the way, I'll just have one more thing. Another thing you can add to the context is like if you do have specific documentation formatting or requirements or like a wiki or something like that that you want Kiro to have the context of, you can point it to that as well and it can be added to the context. I don't have an example of that right now, but you can upload files, you can upload images, things like that, and Kiro will take care of what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay, so I guess what did you envision next? Are we going to be building something?
Yeah, so let's see. I think maybe we'll continue on with so it's saying what I like to continue with task 6.3, which is matching the matching explanation system, I guess, in which it will be matching candidates and then explaining why they were a good match. We could jump to task 7, which is the profile management service, which would be like managing people profiles, or we could do something else. So let's just go on to task 6.3. I'll just hit 1. We'll see if it okay, here we go. Perfect. Let's work on task 6.3. I'll make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see it. It's not like
and I like how
up.
it's a very, we're saying a very positive companion.
Yeah.
So it's perfect. Great.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? It's everyone has worked with, that developer who's like, not as helpful as you might like. Kiro's always super friendly. So Kiro's going to be like, yeah, let's do it. I actually, like, you might have seen that in my original prompt. I'm like, here's what I'm trying to build. And then my last line was like, let's build with an exclamation mark. And it's like, great, let's do it. Like, it's exciting. Like, it's a really fun thing to work on. And so you can have fun kind of collaborating with Kiro in whatever personality you want. I'm normally a pretty optimistic, bubbly person. So as you can tell, but yeah, I like to have fun with it. So what it's doing is it's reading through the requirements file and the design file, which of course it generated, but it's going to go review those. Maybe I made changes to them. You never know. It's searching the workspace. So it's looking at the backend structure. It's checking the matching service. Oh, looks like there's, an error here. Let's see, file limit of 50 lines. The agent has seen this error and will try a different approach to write the file. So, what other approaches might there be? Kiro is an IDE, right? So it has access to your file system. It can go create the file in a different way. If the graphical way isn't working, it could create it, digitally, going and creating that file. Maybe generating command line arguments. I'm not really sure what it's doing. We're going to see once it's done. It looks like it did create this match explanation service here. You can see here that there are a few build issues in here. We could kind of go review and see what's going on.
So as we were, after you prompted, it already went, created the file, created that for you to be able to quickly click on it and review it as it continues. It's still working on it.
Yeah, the user interface is so good. I can click here. I can click here and open files. I can open, you can see it's still making changes to the file, but I'm viewing it, right? When it has an undo button, if you're like, whoa, that is way more than I thought it would generate, and you're like, start over, you can totally undo the changes. I will say, pro tip that I really wanted to mention here, in the same way that you wouldn't want a Gen AI agent to go and develop an entire application without any input or checks from a human, make sure that as you're doing things like this and generating big chunks of code or big fully featured, files and stuff, make sure that you're using your Git workflow to like have save points as you go along, right? So if I'm going to generate something that is like a really big change, or say I want to refactor something, make sure you've got kind of a save point to go back to if you want to just like blow away all your changes and then go back to your previous Git node. Make sure that you're using Git so that you have something to roll back to, especially if you're asking for a really big change. In this case, right, our change, we're kind of building things from scratch. But if you've got an existing application, you've got a huge code base that you're wanting to do something really big with, make sure that you're using kind of those save points and have somewhere to fall back on in case things go a little bit sideways.
That's a great call from also one of our other audience. Srinivas was mentioning about GitHub and maybe how that integrates with this entire flow. So you just like briefly touched on it, but how would that look like?
Sorry, say again. I was like looking through the code changes.
Yeah, no worries. We did have somebody from the audience mentioning about GitHub. You just mentioned Git and
yeah.
So what does that look like integration with like Kiro or?
Yeah. So you can use Git in your command line, Git add, Git commit, Git push, all of those things in your command line, like you would any other IDE. Um, but the integration with Q Developer with GitHub and GitLab are around being able to assign issues and full feature development to Q Developer as an agent. And so maybe this is a good place to kind of talk about the difference between Q Developer and Kiro, like as separate products, right? There are separate teams that are building them. There's separate functionality. So Q Developer has several agentic type workflows that are supported. That the line between Kiro and Q Developer is like still starting to be blurred as far as the capabilities that they have, but the direct integration with GitLab and GitHub are related to Q Developer specifically, where you can go create an issue in GitHub or GitLab, assign it to Q Developer, and then have it go generate all of that code or perform whatever task you're asking for, and then it will come back with a PR for you to be able to approve, right? So that's kind of the workflow within your Git environment. But if you're talking about just developing here in my IDE, I'm going to use the same Git flow that I would normally when I'm developing code. I'm just probably going to be making my pull requests much bigger because I'm generating a lot more in a shorter period of time. So I might be, instead of pushing small pieces of a particular feature, I'm going to be pushing the whole feature in because I'm done with it, right? So that's kind of the change in developer workflow and mindset as a part of using some of these tools.
And I'm also including here in the banner, if you want to learn more about Q Developer, Q Developer CLI, you can do so at amazon.com, developer learning, Q Developer CLI. Okay, there's a lot happening as we speak.
Yeah,
and I know you're jumping back and forth. So what's happening?
Okay, so what's happening? So it's created kind of this this match explanation service, which is the top level service that's going to do multiple like matching types. Right now it's going through the semantic matching service. You can see there's a lot of issues in this file right now because it's basically generated placeholder code that's going to be calling these other services underneath it to consolidate the kind of matching summary, matching explanation. So that's why there are so many errors there. It's so scary to have a file that's full of red, but that's what's actually happening. So, but like as a developer, right, I might actually opt to do something different where I would create the match explanation service and just start with the bare minimum, right? Of I'm just going to put in the semantic service at the start, and that's the one that I'm going to develop, and I'll do that. And then I'll go and add to the matching service to call another service. Well, then I might end up like refactoring in it because I didn't have all this other stuff in mind when I was doing it service by service. But because Kiro is kind of taking this all at once approach for this one specific piece of functionality, it's got a lot of placeholder code as it's going along and implementing all of those other services, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense. And we're seeing it live as those files are being changed and it's creating, and the files are being created on the left. And I think you are calling out all those files in red.
Yes. So, and I really like that. Where was it here? So here it is. I need to update the Bedrock configuration to use Claude explanations instead of the embedding model. And Claude explanations is like a relatively new feature. Kiro already knows about it, which is really cool. So I'm excited to go review the code and see what that looks like. And you can see here that it made some changes to the package JSON file. It made some changes to the README file. Maybe I want to go like look at what the edits to the README file were. So I can actually view a diff here. So this little guy, this little kind of squarish looking icon, I can go directly to the diff mode of what that change consisted of. So it'll see here, I'll say, oh, I've got some fallback explanations happening. Look, it's updated kind of the explanation model ID to Claude Haiku. It picked the right model. Like it picked a smaller model to do this smaller ask. That's so cool. I'm like getting to see all of this as surprise with you guys in live. So now it's got a demo as well that I can potentially go run. Like it's generating a demo script for me. And what I really like about this, I actually iterated on this earlier. I don't necessarily need to show it live if we don't have time, but I think it's really cool that it built a demo service for each of these different services that it's implementing. I absolutely would not have done that as a developer. To
It
like,
takes
I would
a
do
lot
the
of
unit
time and
test.
effort.
Yes, I would do the unit test. Yeah, of course, we're going to do integration tests, but like, there's no way I would spend time building an actual demo tomorrow. Come on.
And I
I got to
know,
get it out the door.
depending on like how your organization works, with a lot of the customers that I work, building a demo is how then you can go and showcase either to executives, get funding, or even if you're trying to like
Yeah.
build a solution to share, and like, I don't know if you're selling your solutions or whatever it might be, having this, it's groundbreaking for me.
Yeah.
I even gonna start using it for my own demos that I have to.
I actually did
build
that
here.
in a prior role. We had an innovation day, and it was 2 or 3 days of you could just build whatever you wanted. And I had an idea for our support team to create like this multi-tenant dashboard so they could get more visibility without having to go in the application and change tenants to look at dashboards and stuff. And I demoed it to like a bunch of VPs, and they were like, "How soon can we have this in production?" I'm like, "Oh man, oh great! I guess this is
Exactly.
going right." And so if you're building it with this, it's already got everything you would need. Like, you can totally get to production faster. So it's great. So now Kiro is saying, "Hey, let me go run the test to make sure everything works." Pretty sure this isn't going to work because I can see we still have build issues, but why not? Let's like Kiro go through it and see if it ends up fixing some of the build issues that it's got. That's what I really like about this. So if Kiro doesn't ask me to do a build or a test or whatever, it's gonna go open its own terminal. I will say, being totally transparent, I haven't found the Kiro terminal to be as good of an experience, just because I feel like sometimes it's missing dependencies, or it's not set up the same way that my terminal is, as far as like being able to run npm install and all of those things. So I'm going to go ahead and let it run here. It's going to run the build. It needs to run install first, though, so I'm not sure what it's thinking. But that's what, again, this service is in preview, right? So they're still making changes to it. When I opened it up today to come do this demo, I needed to do an update, right? Because they've already pushed changes to it since I was last using it last week. So keep in mind, they're still working on it. They're still working on all of these different features. I could totally go in parallel and go run it in my own terminal, or have Q CLI run it. So this is one use case that I've kind of done, is I'll let Kiro, Kiro's kind of like running through some of the changes, and then I'll use Q CLI. I'm like, "Hey, go build the service and resolve any build issues that you find." And so Q CLI will go do that for me. I'm just gonna reject this and get out of it, because I don't think it's gonna end up being a good experience here. But I'll say, "All right, build the project and resolve any build issues you find."
And like you were saying, within Kiro, now you're in Q CLI.
Now I'm in Q CLI here in the same IDE. And so Q is going to go off and run all those build things, and I can just like let Kiro take a break and like hang out for a second, because honestly, like, again, I know that it's not going to run the test successfully because it's not building correctly at this point. So I'm just going to kind of come out of it. Let's see what's going on. So Q, oh, where'd it go? Oh, it's back to Kiro. Hang on. Q is having trouble responding right now. Oh no. Dispatch failure. Oh, something's happening with Q, I guess, in my IDE. Let's just do it here. Oh my gosh. I should run, hang on a second, I should run npm install too. Oops, hang on.
It's just live. It always happens. But these are like the moments where you can also see the behind the scene.
Yeah, I mean, I really think that at
Okay.
least part of it is going to be the fact that it hasn't installed all of the dependencies. But we don't have to live debug here. Anyway, you can kind of see like what it's generated. The other thing I like is that you may have seen it as we were going through. There's actually a follow button, and I clicked it a while back just to see like what it was all about. And what that does is it opens the files that it's changing here in your file editor. I'm going to like minimize this guy real quick, which is really great, because let's see, okay, npm run build, which is really awesome, because then you get to see all of the updates that it's making kind of live here without clicking on any of these. But you can see like the different files that it's updated, because I already did a git push last week when I made my latest changes. So we'll see how this goes. Oh my God, I'm back in the dark ages using my own terminal commands. What's happening? So slow. We'll see what's up with Kiro, or with Q rather. I had to re-authenticate this morning, so I don't know what's going on with that. But I will say, as you go through and like move through using Kiro for some of this stuff, right? You might reach a point where like the context is too large for what you're asking it to do. And in those cases, it really helps to ask it to break up the task into smaller tasks. So there have been a couple of cases where you saw like being able to live update a file with more than 50 lines kind of wasn't something that it could do, but it could also reach a point where like the session itself has become too big because it's kind of caching a lot of things that it's doing right now to make sure that the context is continually up to date. At some point, it's going to reach a point where like that context window is just too big and you'll have to restart a session, but all of your context is here in your IDE, right? So you can just refresh and start where you left off.
And while you do that,
Yeah.
I know that there was another question that came up on
Yeah, I
any
want to
idea
answer
on
some questions.
usage and cost. I was going to share for this one too, if you're able to go to the Kiro page, which is Kiro Dev. Within Kiro Dev, if you navigate under resources, there's blogs, there's also our pricing. I know that Kiro is in preview, and as in terms of pricing, we're gathering a lot of that information. It keeps on getting updated with the latest details. Just at a high level in terms of usage and pricing. I know that you went through some of those specs, and that's how we will be looking at pricing as well, how those specs are being developed. But I would highly suggest anybody that has questions about pricing or some of that structure and some of the most common FAQs under Kiro Dev. That's where I would be searching for that information.
There's also link in addition to like the blog and the FAQs, there's also a Discord community. There's also a LinkedIn profile that you can follow for the latest Kiro news. And there's a button that says suggest an idea. So you could be part of like helping them prioritize their roadmap. Obviously, getting access would be number one on the list, which again, I already told you they're working through. You can report a bug there, right? So the team is very much wanting to hear your feedback. If you've got access to Kiro already and you're using it, please like good and bad, right? I attended an internal call last week where I was just like, I'm a huge fan. SA should be using this every single day for what we're building, right? We should be able to talk confidently about what we're building to our customers. It should be a tool that everyone is using. If you're going to be creating a project, it is a huge accelerator, and it's been really great for my development workflow for sure.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I didn't know about the Discord one.
Yeah. Yep. There's also a changelog there, so you can see kind of what the preview release contains, but also then they'll be updating that as they make additional releases over time. And like you said, they just announced some of the pricing. As usual with all AWS service, it's based on consumption. So the more that you use Kiro, there are pricing tiers that include that level of utilization, and it's flexible too. So it's something that I just went and looked at the pricing, and it's expensive to run a service like this with Gen AI. And I think we're starting to see that, people who are building these tools, we have to take the cost of running the service into account. And so being able to minimize that expense based on the level of utilization that you have per month, like I love that it's flexible and that you can change it back and forth. And of course, there's always a free tier so that when you're just trying it out, you can try it out and stay in the free tier as well.
Excellent. Okay, I know that we have about maybe 10 minutes, 11 minutes
nice.
Left, and I wanted to give you a little more time to touch base on maybe some takeaways or items that we haven't covered yet.
Yeah. So let's see. What I wanted to do was show you one of the demo things that it generated. So let's see. What we want to do is run. Why did I do that? Let's see. Nothing. Oh, it doesn't have my history. Okay, so what I want to do is run the scraping service. So,
and again, as a context for those that are just joining this. scraping service was a service that would go into, was it LinkedIn?
Yeah, so LinkedIn and the Society of Women Engineers, like job roles or volunteer roles. So I'm just going to move my camera real quick. So I want to go, yeah, backend scraping. Okay, and I want to run the demo. So I want to do this guy.
And again, this is a demo.
So I want to, it's a demo that Kiro built for me, which is awesome. So, oh my gosh, it's not going to run. Hold on a second, run build. I may have cleared out my session from last time. So what it does is it's generated this. Let me just go through the demo script real quick so you can see what it's doing. So what it does is it instantiates a new instance of the scraping service, and then it runs through some test data to be able to demonstrate that the service is running. Oh shoot, I hit the build again. Here we go. Let's see if this works. And what it does is it has these, it's not working. Oh, I should have tested this morning. Live demos, you guys. What it does is it runs through, it's probably just because of the other build issues that are in the file. So what it does is it runs the scraping service and goes and calls and shows like some of this console stuff. So what it does is it mocks up what it wants to, what it expects to have from the scraping service that runs, right? So it's expecting to scrape a title, the description of the role, and what the requirements are for that volunteer role. And so it's mocking up all of these different data sets based on the structure of the class that was generated and mocking that up as if the scraping service is coming back with it, right? And I actually iterated on this some because like the URL was not correct. Like it was like swe.org/ roles or whatever. That doesn't
it's
really
taking
exist.
a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, it's making a lot of assumptions and it's just generating what it thinks it should be. Well, it's not going to go validate whether that URL exists, right? So I'm a developer and I still have to do those things, right? So well, and it generated the same thing for the LinkedIn scraping service. And again, I actually iterated on this one and went I went into the developer console of my my Chrome browser, went and visited my own volunteer role page, scraped all of the HTML off of it, and said, hey, the structure of the entities that you're grabbing doesn't match the actual LinkedIn profile structure. Like, here's an example. Go refactor the code to match this example, like the names of the fields and all of that. So I just handed it an example and it went and updated all the names of the fields and stuff. So I definitely would not have taken the time to create these demos myself. But the fact that it created them helps me iterate on them in a way that is way better than, then it can go update all of the unit tests and then I can go run it for real, right? And test it against a real scraping.
And it's also a way of like, in a way, having QA or like testing in between. Like if we abstract it at like having multiple services and just validating that each service is doing and working as expected, that's another way of seeing it.
Yeah, and what's awesome is like, because I have this demo, right? I guess one could make the argument that I should have like given it that example as part of the context before building the service, right? But it's one of those things where like I can get the structure of the project. What I would really do as a developer is go get the structure of the project, go put in some placeholders, and then go look at the example and go do that myself. But Kiro can go generate it for me, right? So yeah, I am a huge fan of the fact that it generated this demo service. Again, it's not something that I would have done, but all of the documentation and everything, like it updated the README as well, associated with the demo. So I'm gonna have to go iterate on it and make sure that like actually running it live works.
All the things that I even used to forget as a developer, I would just write my code and not update anything else. And then,
oh, one thing I did want to mention: there are other features associated with Kiro that we didn't really have time to go into the agent hooks at all. But this is a really cool feature that I'm continuing to iterate on. So there's the concept, we have specs, right? Which we already talked about. The spec is made up of a requirement, design, and task list. We went through that. But there's also the concept of agent hooks. And so I built when I want to create a new agent hook, it's via natural language processing. I can put in a natural language prompt and say, here's something I want to do automatically. So at its core, agent hooks are basically again, this is only a capability that's possible because Kiro is its own IDE and has access to your file system. It can watch changes to your files and automatically take action on your behalf. So I just added this morning. Obviously, it didn't work because it didn't go and update the build when I went to go in the package JSON file. So I need to troubleshoot why that happened. Maybe the file paths aren't correct because it's making changes to. So this was originally configured when that scraping explanation directory didn't exist. So the fact that the package JSON files are under that subdirectory, it's not watching those files because they didn't exist when I created this. So maybe that's not the best use case.
Having that capability.
But having this capability where I can say, hey, watch these package JSON files. If I was making a much smaller change or iterating on something that would have been a better use case. But it will, monitor it for new library additions and automatically build the project. I could also say, maybe I want to create a new agent hook and say.
But that's a great one to call out, the making sure the libraries are up to date. That's usually from the security teams when there's vulnerabilities in those, that's a word that it's hard for me to say, in those packages, that's one to call out. I know that we're 4 minutes out. We had so much we also wanted to share with you. We have people from our audience, Natalie, saying thank you so much for the session.
Awesome.
Thank you for walking us through the demo, and looking forward for other demos. And wrapping up here, I know that you just wrote something.
Oh, I just said monitor package JSON files and run a Q developer /review agent workflow to assess security vulnerabilities. I just wanted to show how creating the agent actually works. So it sends this request to Kiro, and Kiro actually generates the package security here agent. So that's how it gets out there. Pretty cool. Anyway, yeah, hopefully you guys get access to Kiro soon if you don't already, and you can go play around with it. I've had a lot of fun iterating with it, and yeah, maybe we'll have to do another Twitch stream when my application is up and running and ready for use.
do an update and a follow-up. Would love that. Yeah. With that, Natalie, I wanted to thank you so much for joining us today, from walking us through the demo. I can't wait for your application to be live and then share back that success. I know it's a personal project that you've been wanting to bring to life. And also, thank you very much for the audience for being so engaging, bringing forward so many questions. Join us on the next episode. We have way more to share about different capabilities. So stay tuned. And again, my name is Tamara Gagliardi. Natalie, if you want to say some closing notes on your end.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do a plug for reInvent. I'll be at reInvent as well, talking about the CDK, maybe even some Q and Kiro things. So yeah, thank you so much for hosting this. I had a great time. Keep on building.
Excellent. Thank you. See you next time.
Bye.